Tonight, the visiting IMF team has signaled its intention to support Ghana's proposed homegrown economic program that will be put before during negotiations. Now, this was contained in a statement issued by the IMF as the team touched down in Accra for engagement with the government. Leader of the mission, Dr. Carlo Stradvik, added that based on the request by government, his outfit stands ready to assist the country restore economic stability and address the impact of Russia's war on Ukraine, as well as the lingering COVID-19 pandemic. But who exactly is Dr. Carlo Stradvik? As you can see on your screen, he is a division chief at the IMF and the 2020, that's the 22 and 11 months. He's an economist by profession with specialty in macroeconomics. And he also covers Benin, Burkina Faso, Ghana, and Togo when it comes to his operations with the IMF. And he will be leading the IMF team to Ghana, and he also leads IMF's department on low-income country issues. It's very important that we understand who this gentleman is, because he's going to be really having negotiations between government of Ghana on whether or not we need an IMF program in terms of the analysis as well as the balance of payment services. But let's now bring you excerpt of a document from the Finance Ministry that seeks to answer frequently asked questions on the engagement with the fund. And it reads, as you can see on your screen, for the very first question: does going to the IMF mean suspension of government programs and expenditures? Government says no, that the member country, which is Ghana, has primary responsibility for selecting, designing and implementing policies to make the IMF-supported program successful. It also further explains that this implies that government of Ghana's programs in line with its EDP will still go on as planned insofar as it is efficient and does not overburden public finances. So that's a condition there. Now, the very second question in the minds of various economists and the general public is whether or not government will terminate the e-levy because the IMF will give Ghana money. And in response, the Finance Ministry is categorical, saying a big no. The fact that the IMF lending to Ghana will be for balance of payment support, that is shoring up Ghana's international reserves. It also adds, as you can see on the screen in the very second paragraph there, an IMF-supported program is likely to encourage government to investigate the factors hindering the success of the e-levy, that's including providing technical assistance if needed, and come out with strategies to improve that. Now, this question is a kind that so many of us have been asking when government gave the hint of seeking IMF assistance, whether or not Ghana is facing an economic crisis. And this is how the Ministry of Finance puts its answer. It cites the war in Ukraine by Russia together with COVID-19 as the two crises that government is currently faced with. According to the Finance Ministry, the whole world, including Ghana, is facing significant policy challenges, although each country is at a different stage. When it comes to Ghana, we are at the early stage, while countries like Sri Lanka have full-blown economic crisis. Currently, the country is having its populace line up for bags of milk, even that of fuel, to put in their very vehicles. This is how bad the situation there is. But government is saying the situation back home is very much under control. And to quote the IMF Managing Director, the Finance Ministry saying that we are facing a crisis on top of a crisis. That answers the question of whether or not Ghana is facing a crisis. Now, the very last question that, of course, the Finance Ministry has answered in this graphic is whether or not, what particular stage Ghana's economic crisis is in. Remember that the very earlier slide explained the reason why we're in a crisis. Now, government is saying that Ghana's economy is facing external shocks emanating from the scarring effect of COVID and the Russian-Ukraine war, resulting in high rising inflation, exchange rate depreciation, widening Eurobond spreads of our sovereign bonds, and loss of investor confidence in the economy. So quite interesting. Government is basically, attributing current economic crisis to the war in Ukraine and COVID-19. Well, we're joined via Zoom by the Executive Director of the Center for Economics, Finance and Inequality Studies Service, Dr. Benjamin Amwa, for his perspective on this matter. We're grateful, Doctor, you could join us. We finally have an idea what government is looking for from the IMF in terms of funds. But what do you make of this entire engagement?
Very much. The engagement is a good one, and it is refreshing for us as a country, because at least for now, we have the idea that government really want to tackle the issues that confront the management of the economy. So now what we need to look out for now is, what is it that we are tabling to the IMF team by way of our attempt to get our economy back on track. So for the investor community, it is good news that at least we want to confront the situation and deal with it as it is now.
Well, government is also looking forward to, about $3 billion from the IMF. How feasible could this be, especially when engagements are yet to start tomorrow?
It is highly feasible, because from discussions and information so far, the IMF has about $70 billion available to support countries that are having similar challenge like Ghana. Again, the $3 billion that Ghana will be sourcing from the IMF is informed based on our current financing needs as a country. So if the discussions should go on well, and I hope it will, I believe that from which areas of our expenditure we want to relook, and from the enhanced domestic program, how we want to prioritize some of our programs and some of our ideas and some of our initiatives, we believe strongly that the government, over the entire period that we seek to go into the IMF program, will succeed in mobilizing the $3 billion that it seeks to get from the IMF.
But Doc, government is quite optimistic that this engagement with the IMF will not see specific programs being scrapped off. We do know that time in and time out, this is the 17th IMF program that we're headed for. But in all of these engagements, there are compromises. How do you weigh government's overconfidence, if we could use that term, regarding its homegrown policies, and how the IMF would, in effect, accept these programs?
Again, that is a very slippery and tricky one to answer, because in most instances, when you look at the IMF policies try to put into priority zones projects and initiatives that attempt to help the poor. So in this case, government policies or initiatives that are poor are most likely to get a pass from the IMF. On the other hand, other projects that from the IMF view can be put on hold, because in terms of the ranking order, they are not so much of a high priority. Then it is up to the government of Ghana to sift through its programs and initiatives, and then present programs that are in the interest of the poor or the marginalized, for which the IMF may consider to agree to. And then for some other programs that are big projects that do not necessarily impact directly on the poor, government may have to shelve it for now as it seeks to get the fiscal space with the support of the IMF in terms of managing its finances.
Interesting. Well, government is looking at a 3-year program. Too long or too short, considering the current challenges facing the economy?
If you ask me, from what is happening around the globe and the fact that international capital market is becoming tighter and tighter, I would say that minimum 3 years is okay, because it is minimum 3 years, meaning that government appreciate the fact that chances are that the project will have to go beyond 3 years. So a target of 3 years is okay. But then if government goes for the view that there would a need to extend its association with the IMF for the purpose of revamping the economy, then it is also in order. Looking at the global financial situation, 3 years to turn around the economy is a bit ambitious. But then again, there is nothing wrong to have such a target and then work towards it. So 3 years minimum it's okay.
Yet another target or expectation. Government is, looking about, around a minimum of 7 months that, is hoping to close negotiations with the IMF. How much of a target, how measurable is this target from your perspective?
Again, I believe that this 7 months has been informed by past IMF engagement, past from conditions that we have in the past and how we have engaged the IMF. So strongly, 7 months is feasible because this is not the first time we are going to the IMF. I believe the template, the files, everything is more or less available. And the team that is also coming has prepared on exactly what to do. So 7 months is a good target to work and to negotiate something out of the conditions that we find ourselves. So it is, of course, a good time and a good time framework to work with.
Dr. Amoah, this is the 17th time that Ghana is seeking IMF assistance. Are you convinced that this program, this time around, will bring some catalytic effect in terms of funding for Ghana?
Absolutely, definitely something will come out of it. Again, it is not only the 3 billion. Aside the 3 billion, our association with the IMF to get out of this current situation will also open some doors for our fiscal space to have some more funds coming in from other third parties, commercial banks, other international funding agencies may also come in simply because the IMF is providing some level of supervision as far as our attempt to get out of difficulty is concerned. So definitely, in addition to the 3 billion, there may be other funds that may come in to help the country out of this difficulty.
All right. So finally, tomorrow begins engagement formally between the IMF and that of government negotiators. What particular expectations do you have as an economist ahead of this engagement?
How do we get ourselves out of these current difficulties? And again, we shouldn't forget that this time around, vested interest groups have come out to make certain demands of government. We can talk about the Teachers Association, we can talk about UTAC, we can talk about TUC. In most instances, some of these labor unions are sacrificed when it comes to programs of this nature. But this time around, they, from the strategic point, have been a bit fast to table their demands ahead of this discussion. So we believe that the government will have to consider some of these interest groups and make sure that in its negotiations with IMF, some of these vested groups will have their interests protected. If not, we may go through some difficult times in dealing with some of these vested labor unions. That notwithstanding, we believe strongly that something good will come out of it. And then from tomorrow, the engagement will go on well. But with these 6 months or 7 months, we should be getting some turnaround in terms of support.
Dr. Benjamin Amoah, we're grateful for your analysis on this. He's Executive Director of the Center for Economics, Finance and Inequality Studies, CEFIS.